What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So Wednesday is here, which means a new summit is now live in Motorfest, and with that we are finally going to have the Ferrari one, which funnily enough is going to be the best summit this month, or at least the last summit of every month is the best one. But we are going to have the Ferrari SF90. Now, I have heard that people have made almost the exact same livery on a regular version of this car, so yeah, that's pretty interesting. We are going to have the playground tire there in gold and 100,000 bucks, and then 100,000 XP. When it does come to this summit, though, it is going to be a tad different because there is no skills in it. There is going to be 9 races. On top of that, we're also going to have the fair thing here, so every single event is going to have a vehicle loaned to you. Even the ones that are going to say, yo, Street Tier 2 and stuff like that, like Ferrari here, if I click on it, you are going to notice that it is going to let you pick the vehicle. You can change the pro settings, but you cannot have any of your part sets on the vehicle on those. So that is something to keep in mind there. I did end up running no pro settings on anything, which I would say is going to make the summit a tad more entertaining. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest here and say most of the events really are going to be fairly straightforward. The biggest thing here is going to be keeping your nitrous up. Obviously, you don't have a chemist, so making sure you guys have more power in these events is going to tremendously help. Getting around the corners on a good line, being able to fly out of them is also going to help a lot. And then on top of all of that, the other thing I can definitely recommend here is to probably run a few of the races a couple of times. I mean, I know I at least did. Funny part is I was kind of messing up a lot because I run through them so dang casually that a lot of the time I'm barely even trying. So I'm like, okay, well, let me go do this race again because that was some terrible driving. And also, one thing I want to mention here, the Vita race here is going to be one of the Donk events. So it's only going to be around 30.5 seconds or 35 seconds. I don't know why I said 30.5 seconds, bro. I'm cooked. It's also going to be around that to like 40-ish seconds, so keep that in mind. Besides all of that, though, basically every single event is probably going to run around 2.5 to around 4-ish minutes, at least what I have noticed when doing all of them. And one thing I do also want to mention here is it is kind of funny to me how the vehicle loans that you are going to be using, for example, Beyond Imagination is going to be the new Ferrari, which you guys can view here. This car really does slide a bit or kind of get fishtaily and lose grip at times, one thing I really was noticing about it. And that was something I did notice other cars do as well, but it is a bit frustrating. But I would recommend being a tad careful because you might have a bit too much confidence in this vehicle. And also, as you can see here, you're not going to be able to change the pro settings on this vehicle. So, yeah, do be careful with this. Do not have too much confidence in it because I was noticing it likes to slide a bit. Then again, that's kind of going to be a trend with a good amount of cars in this game. We're also then going to have the pure Ferrari DNA here, guys. I gotta admit, this race is probably going to be the most annoying for a lot of players, and the reason why I say it is going to be a small race. I believe it's around 2 laps, and it's also going to have a lot of corners. You can also cut a good amount of these corners going off-road, which in return, depending on how you hit those corners, the car is going to want to slide a bit, you know, because you're going in the grass with it, so that makes a bit of sense. But do be careful on those and make sure when you are cutting the corners, you're not going to be turning the wheel too much when you do it. Besides that, I would admit this summit will probably be pretty straightforward, and again, there's not going to be any feats, so when you get into it, expect around 9 races, and I'm interested to see where this one does end up ending on. Unfortunately, we're not going to know what the overall platinum rank is. I really wish they would add it. But with this being the top 15,000 now, I would say it's going to be much easier to get platinum compared to before. Besides all of that, let's jump right into this.